So this video is about organization, and again the item here is structure, hierarchy, and boundaries. So again, in order to understand the health of a relationship and how we can really create successful relationships, we need to look at the whole organization. We had another video on type, purpose, and reason. And this video is on the actual structure and the hierarchy and boundary. So let's talk about that a little bit in terms of, a successful relationship a lot of times depends on the hierarchy, specific hierarchy of a relationship, such as, if it is a parent-child hierarchy, creates a certain structure. The structure and with that structure, there are certain expectations and norms and opportunities to kind of navigate around that. So with that hierarchy of parent-child, what we have is a certain power imbalance and certain roles. And we will get into the roles in the next video specifically, and at times some of these videos, they really overlap with one another because of the content is constructed that way. It's not possible to talk about hierarchies without really also addressing roles a little bit. So in this case, the role of a father or a mother, compared to a role of a child, that by itself has certain limitations or restrictions or certain demands that are important. A child cannot be expected to be a caregiver, right? It's really the duty and responsibility of a parent. So that itself, which would be a role, leads to the issue of the importance. So we need to pay attention in terms of the actual hierarchy when we talk about the relationship. So in order for a relationship between parent-child to be successful, a parent needs to always remind themselves about that specific role they have within the hierarchy to take care of the child. So to give an example, for instance, a lot of times we hear this kind of saying that, parents say, I'm the best friend of my child. A lot of times they feel like if it would be beneficial for them to shed that role of a parent and just be best friends. And they think that's really good thing to do. Whereas generally we know from really years of evidence of parent-child relationships and the outcomes, more or less, of such positions that people take toward each other, that being a best friend is not the role of a parent. A lot of times that can also be misleading. A lot of times that leads to blurred boundaries. It leads to overstepping certain boundaries. It leads to intrusion into the privacy and autonomy of the child, because a parent may just feel like, well, if I'm a best friend, I'm supposed to act like a best friend. And as best friends, we act differently. We have different levels of freedom and rights that we have with our best friends versus children. It's much better, really, and much more beneficial to remain a parent and remind ourselves that we are there to guide, to protect, to lead, to educate, to support our children in our capacity as someone who has brought them into this world or accepted them into this family, as if it is adoption, and there is a limit to that sense of closeness. So there is somewhere where we have to draw the line and not really become their best friends. They need to actually have their own best friends who are part of their genre. They have to have best friends who are within their age limit. They have to have best friends who are within their cultural norms and that they're growing up with. They have to have best friends who can understand their own predicaments, their similarities, their similar experiences that they have in life. They need to reflect upon each other's, culture of peers to learn. They need to have that type of an exchange with really similar groups. That's why we call them peers, right? Best friend needs to come from that peer culture. It is their struggle that is unique to them. And if we want to come in and impose ourselves as a best friend, what we are doing is we are mixing too many things that really don't belong to each other. We are imposing certain cultural values that actually belong to our generation that have less to do with their well-being, and instead of understanding their struggles. And also we create certain expectations, that come across as pressures on them because we want to feel good as best friends. We want to kind of quiet our conscience that, yeah, we have fulfilled our role as, this buddy, close type of a good friend to our child. Whereas that's really not necessary. We have already fulfilled our role as a caring parent who is capable of fulfilling fully the certain responsibilities and duties that a caring parent needs to have. So we should not mask the deficits that we may feel we have as a parent by engaging in this vicarious feeling good type of a role that we call best friend. That's not going to replace and substitute that deficient part of our own role as a parent. If we don't know how to be a good parent, we got to learn how to be a good parent. We don't need to become best friends. This is very, very important. And in order to really know what's a good parenting about, we just got to learn about that. And this video is not about good parenting, so I'm going to kind of stop that thread of thought right there. But I would encourage you, if you at any times you feel like you may not be fulfilling your role as a completely responsible parent fully, then I would encourage you to read up on that, take some courses, get some consultation, etc. But don't mistake your role as a good parent with a best friend. And this is, again, goes back to that hierarchy that we talked about, which also can mess up the hierarchy. Think about the fact that as part of that power imbalance, we have the parent-child hierarchy with the parent at a little bit of a higher level of hierarchy, which is more or less creates a sense of authority and a sense of power over the child. That is a necessary component of the growth of a child to allow their more or less neurobiology to develop effectively and appropriately, to come to understand and respect the nature of hierarchy, the benefits of hierarchy, because ultimately hierarchy creates order and organization within a community, within a small group of individuals, and that come together, let's say a family. Hierarchy is good if it is served in the service of, or it is used in the service of order and organization in an efficient and effective way. Now, if we get rid of that hierarchy between a parent and child by creating a best friend type of a situation, we have robbed the child of the opportunity of learning about the benefits of hierarchy, of authority, of following certain directions. Because following directions, the issue of establishing leadership and followership and creating this kind of a dynamics where certain people come to follow a more wiser, more experienced type of a leader, and a lot of times that happens to be the older individual, and especially the older generation, has created some benefits over millennia. This is part of our nature of being human. Basically experience brings certain benefits with it, and experience is rested in the older generation. And you have that within that hierarchy of parent-child relationship. We don't want to mess with that, because messing with that would create a completely novel situation, which is robbing the people from their benefits and creating more dilemmas, more chaotic problems to solve. And within that, then people haphazardly go about creating or dealing with that novel situation, and a lot of times it backfires and they shoot themselves in the foot, and they kind of become destructive in nature. So hierarchy is important to understand. Now, that was, as I mentioned, in the relationship of a parent-child relationship, but also you have hierarchy between siblings. Again, within sibling rivalry and relationship, you also establish a little bit of a authority and power. And also you have that in romantic relationships. Again, if you think about it, and this goes back to what we started with in terms of the diversity and core trajectories, that we are dealing with limited resources. When two people come together and establish a new relationship, they have to ultimately share a lot of the resources that they have. That's time, finances, assets, even emotional capacity and energy, everything that is happening to them. They need to share those experiences. So when it comes to sharing experiences, it's very hard to have a very equal, like absolutely equal type of a hierarchy and position and authority, because there is a lot more negotiation that needs to take place within an equal opportunity and equal power relationship than when you have a little bit of a upper and lower type of hierarchy, meaning one person is the more authoritative, the more powerful person, the leader in this relationship. The other person is more of a follower, because then what you can do is you can create efficiency within this relationship. You don't have to negotiate every single thing, because among the myriad of diverse differences between two people, you would have to negotiate every single thing. But unless you have this more of an kind of intrinsic, ingrained hierarchy where there is one person who leads, the other person is following, and then you just simply you simply follow that rule and protocol of, we have established this leader-follower type of a proposition here, and we can get things done quickly. When the leader calls out for this and that, the follower follows. And at times there may be some pullback, some resistance, where the follower really doesn't feel like following or doesn't feel like it's the best option. And at times then we do some renegotiation and maybe even change the hierarchy to some extent. It's not unheard of that people in a relationship, they have different types of hierarchy at different times. Like, for instance, one person may be the more financial leader, but then in sexual matters, they're the follower. The partner who was the follower in finances becomes more the leader of the sexual experience. Or in emotional experience, they switch roles. Or in, let's say, in-laws, in dealing with their in-laws, they switch roles. So it's not always one dominant person and one submissive person. They can change these modes of hierarchies across different levels of interaction. And then lastly, boundaries are important. And again, in terms of the boundaries, really is about recognizing and respecting a person's individuality within a relationship. And that's a real complex topic to talk about, but here what I would like to do is invite you to pay attention to how much of that respect do you exercise in the relationship, or do you feel that your partner is exercising with you. And a healthy level of boundary really is established when both partners can allow for that reality to take place and persist within the relationship, where we recognize that we can't both, two people kind of merge into one another as an entity. It's just impossible, both physiologically, physically, as well as ideologically. Now, at times people push toward that, like they, again, by means of a lot of times cultural norms or individual fantasies, if you will, or family norms, they may push for this notion of a soulmate, like two better halves of a unit, to really become one as a unity. And that's a good ideological thing to have, that would create a certain guidance for two people to set aside their differences, to look toward a common goal and aspire toward more or less of a unity and uniform collaboration with one another. But also at the same time, they have to respect the reality that many times that is simply not the case. It's simply not not possible. And the healthy relationship relies heavily of a person being able to navigate this terrain of balancing relationship concerns and duties, responsibilities with individual needs and duties and responsibilities. People need privacy, they need some time off to themselves, they need to experience the world as an individual self at times without being in a relationship. That simply helps them to kind of reinforce their inner resources, strength, and dynamics, and level of kind of existential meaningfulness, that they are who they are. It reinforces the identity of a person, reinforces the self-esteem and confidence of a person. It allows them to direct their focus on their internal self, inner world, and kind of verifying and confirming that they are still functional as a person and they're happy within themselves. It reestablishes their inner, let's say, psychological skin, that not just inner but also just inner outer psychological skin that separates them from the rest of the world and gives us a person a sense of, again, validity and confidence that I'm good, everything is good, I'm well put together, and I can function very well, and I'm happy within. At the same time, also start paying attention to the external world and the necessity of interactions of other individuals that they live with or interact with, family members, partners, etc. So that balance is a very delicate balance that people need to work on, and it can only be established if we respect boundaries. By respecting boundaries, we allow our partner to have their own time, personal time, individual time, their personal thoughts, their personal feelings, the individual, world. We don't intrude in their individual private world. We don't pry into, unnecessarily into their thoughts and emotions and let's say fantasies or secrets that they need to keep for themselves. So we respect that, we validate that, we let them know that it's okay to be an individual, we accept them, we love them, we appreciate them, and that gives a certain sense of security and safety that then people can feel good about, not only about themselves but also about their relationship. Those are important components that a lot of times get overlooked. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for our next video on roles.